Thank you for joining us. We've got Mahatma Das joining. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
All the way from Florida. Florida to
Yeah,
Adelaide.
yeah. Morning and evening.
That's right. Have you had a good morning so far?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about vegetarian, vegan lifestyle, how to live our best life according to these principles of Ayurveda, yoga, not eating meat, meditation, all the above. But before we get into
hmm
that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved on this path?
I got involved on this path. Well, I started maybe when I was 17, and kind of a inquisitive mind, trying to understand the big questions, like what am I supposed to do? How did I end up here? What am I supposed to do? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Because it doesn't seem that it seems somewhat pointless if I just become successful materially and then just get old and die. So it started there, and then I read a book called Bhagavad-Gita when I was 19, which changed my life completely. And at the same time, I was introduced to chanting meditation. Well, two kinds. There's meditation and there's kirtan, which is group chanting. So I was introduced to both. So that combination just it gave me everything I was looking for. And that's when I became vegetarian as a byproduct of that. And then I decided I wanted to share it. And I did what so many great people in the 60s did, dropped out of university, like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, everybody. The intelligent people were dropping out in those days. So that's what I did. And I lived, you could say, like a monk, more or less. I lived in an ashram. We got up very early, 4 o'clock. We chanted for 2 hours every day.
Mm.
And we shared that wisdom. And pretty much that's what I've been doing. I'm married, but I've pretty much been doing that, and applying, that in my life and teaching. And I have a company and we teach many things based on, the ancient teachings of India and then practically applying them. That's the big thing. Not just
What,
learning it, but doing it, living it.
oh, so what's your business?
My business is education. We do workshops, we do coaching. I've developed about 5 online courses, a few in the works. I've written 3 books on my 4th, and lots of individual coaching. And teaching classes, maybe 5, 6 classes, 7 classes a week, all on spiritual topics, but specifically, what I find the greatest problem is application. People understand.
Mm.
If you have a spiritual inclination, you'll understand a lot, even without reading. It's intuitive. But then applying that, and even knowing if you are applying it, and being conscious enough to know when you are and not applying it, that's the real challenge. So that's what I like to focus on.
Mm.
Because I see that as like the broad spectrum of spirituality is not in a particular tradition or ritual, but it's application of the essential principles, what you find in every tradition.
Mm.
So that excites me.
And that's right. Like we really need to check in, don't we? Because we do sort of fall off the wagon sometimes, or we're human, and things do go wrong. Life happens, but
Yeah,
it's about really just checking in.
yeah, we are human. That's the main part of the problem.
Mm. That's it.
If we weren't human, well, we're human, but the good thing is the human is temporary. We're spiritual, so it's like what you identify with,
Yeah.
the material side or the spiritual side, is going to affect. But it's so true that even what I find is that one of the obstacles in gaining knowledge is when you learn something, you think you know it before you actually know it, because you may not be living it, but because you've understood it, sometimes it's hard to distinguish whether or not you're living it. So, like you say, yeah, checking in, it's important. I think a lot of us think we're more spiritual than we are, or maybe it's hard to be introspective and honest with ourselves, and especially our culture is not always supportive of spiritual principles and values. And
two good points there. Yeah, absolutely. We're more spiritual than what we think, and we're living in a society where it's not encouraged, because if we talk about it in the broad daylight of 9 till 5, someone will think, well, what's wrong with her, or what's wrong with him?
exactly, yeah.
You know,
Totally.
some people.
And we all want to fit in, right? So yeah.
That's it. Absolutely. Now, I just want to mention that getting up at 4 a.m. because I've started getting up a bit earlier.
Yeah.
It was about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I thought it still didn't feel early enough because I could hear things, the birds, the planes, and it wasn't peaceful. So I thought I'm doing some. Yes, I need to make it an hour early. I haven't done that yet, but this 4 a.m. thing is good.
You know how I try to help people get up early. And so people say, you know, I get up, like you said, I get up early, 5:30, and then I say, no, that's not early. So you just you start thinking 5:30 is late. Oh, so what's early? Like 4:30. Because that gives you an hour or two of that time where everybody's asleep, everything's quiet. And it's such a beautiful time of day. I have a friend who gets up at 1:30
Really?
every day, and he chants. I think he's chanting now like 8 hours a day. So unless he gets up at 1:30, how is he going to do that? He's meditating 8 hours.
It's amazing. What time does he go to bed? Go to sleep at night?
Probably goes to bed about 8 o'clock, I think. And then he may nap during the day. But when he told me he gets up at 1:30, you know, sometimes I was getting up at 4, 3, and then I thought, well, 3's late compared to him. So it's nice to have some, you know, relative understanding.
So you get up late at 4 o'clock, right?
Oh, I'm so late. It's 4. I should have been up at 1:30. And then I like to take walks. I like to take walks in the morning, and I travel a lot, and so we go to parks. And there's a lot of people in the park. We get there like 5-ish or so, and there's a lot of people there running, walking.
Beautiful.
And you know, it's become much more common, and all the self-help gurus are like, get up early, you know, 5 a.m. club, you know.
Yes.
So this is like, you know, I lived in a village in India, and you know, people go to sleep with the sun and rise with the sun. So, you know, by 5 o'clock, the whole village is up. It's just normal. That's how they've lived,
That's
you know,
right,
for thousands of years.
So it really ties in with a lot of Ayurveda principles too of eating.
Yeah.
You know, we have to eat at certain times and eat in the middle of the day when the sun is up and the energy's stronger. We have our biggest meal then. So it makes sense to rise early, go to bed with the birds.
Yeah. I mean, they would always live near a river, and they would rise early, and they would bathe that. They wouldn't bathe in a shower, they'd bathe in a river. And sometimes take mud and use that. I mean, it's just, you know, I live that. I don't live that way off always, but I've lived that way on and off because I spend a lot of time in India, and it's like, it's just amazing what it does to your consciousness to live that way, you know. You know, it's interesting because, you know, we all want to purify or uplift our consciousness, but the lifestyles we live sometimes are just, they're antithetical to that. And you get out in a village and see how people are living, just living that way. It's like, whoop, you know?
Yeah. So what else do they do? What are some standout things? Just curious now that they do that are so vastly different, even to what is it much different to the way you're living in Florida?
Simplicity.
More simple.
I think life in all urban areas of the world, in urban areas of all over the world, is complicated, and life in rural areas naturally is simpler. But the thing about India is, you go to these villages and you don't know what year it is. It could be, you know, 800 BC, because they're basically living, you know, they're well, and they have their cows, and they have their field, and they have their mud huts, and, you know, it's probably how they lived, you know, 3,000 years ago. And the beauty of it is because, at least before there was television, they didn't have all these seeds in their head of, you know, I could have this and do this. And so they were satisfied, you know, just being in nature and having a close family. I think that's a big difference I see The families are really tight and everybody's working together. And it's also funny. We got to go to a farm. It was a friend of ours, and we were taking some people. So he said, "I want you to see how we churn butter from cream." So they had a big pot, and you have a pole in it, and you tie the pole with ropes, and you pull it. And so we're pulling it, and it's like in our abs we're feeling. And he's saying, "Yeah, you want six pack? You do this." And so, when you live out there, you see there's like 70-year-old women and they're carrying the water on their head and they're working in the field all day. And that's how they've done that their whole life. And they're so strong. They're not stressed. It's not a contaminated environment. So one thing you see is that a lot of what we're dealing with in the urban world is like we're doing countermeasures. We're like the stress is coming, the pollution is coming, and then we have to like meditate to de-stress or go out to de-stress. Where in that lifestyle, it's not like that. So even the people that you might think aren't so meditative or spiritual, they are just because of their lifestyle. It's not. It's just more natural. It's simple and natural.
That's right. No gyms, they don't need to go to the gym. The gym is work and life, right? Like again, yeah, riding our bikes in a dark room at the gym,
Because we're
It's incredible, isn't it? But we can change it, of course. We've all got the choice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's nice. It's nice to know about these people and see it. Like, we take tours to India, and I love to take people to these villages because they see people who are really happy who don't have much. And they're looking at their life and they're saying, I have like 20 times more than these people, and they're 20 times happier than I am. So it's like, I don't have to say anything. It's just obvious. You look at it and you go, okay, what's your realization about this?
And it's incredible because we all hear those stories, don't we? But we
yeah.
still, it's hard to get out of that pattern. But I say hard, but it doesn't have to be hard.
But it's easier when you see it, when it's like
That's right.
you read something, but then you go and see it. Oh, these people seem to be much more content and happy, and they're living in this little house. So it's like, 5 people in a room, and sometimes like 3 kids on one bed. And if you tell the kid you can have your own room, they go, no, I want to sleep on a bed with the other 3. It's a different consciousness, a different world. It's all about community.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of love and affection in the family and respect. And it's, the cows are there, the animals, the taking care of the animals. And I think for Westerners, what's mind-blowing is how cow dung is used as fuel. They put it in patties and they use it as fuel. They cook with it and they use it for fertilizer, and they mix it with mud, and that's how they build houses.
Right?
And I have fun with the guests I take because we have these patties of cow dung, and I go here, and they're like, ooh, and I go smell it. There's nothing. It's just
Really?
yeah, and it's antiseptic. And they actually make incense out of it. It'll keep mosquitoes away.
Right?
Yeah, it's so fun to.
What are they feeding the cows?
The cows just, they just eat grass, whatever growing, and hay, and a little, some grains. That's the beauty of the cow, is just whatever growing. Whatever you don't eat, your banana pills, your orange pills. So you see this, like, oh, nature has made these arrangements. These people are living. To them, it's not like we're living in harmony with nature. This is like the only way we know how to live. So it's so nice to see it. And then you can just reflect on it in your own life. And then you don't, when you go out there, you don't realize how unnatural your life is until you get into that natural environment. And when you go out there and it's like, oh yeah, now, like you say, going to the gym because I'm sitting all day. It's like, yeah, there's like something wrong with that picture, and having to buy purified water, and these people are just going to the well and getting this water. It's you start to understand, yeah, my life is a little out of sync. Or I lived on a farm. The first time I lived on a farm, I didn't know how anything grew because I grew up in Los Angeles, in the city.
Did you? Whereabouts?
West Los Angeles, near the beach. grew up like, surfing and rock and roll and skateboarding. That's that's what we do, and it's just a big city, and you don't realize how alienated you are from nature until you go out. And you're like, so like if I took someone in a store and I go, okay, you see this carrot, you know how it grows? You see this tomato? Does it grow on a tree, a bush, underground? You know? And so when you see it growing, you realize, actually, I've never even seen these things growing before.
Incredible,
And
isn't it?
that's weird. When you think about it, it is quite weird.
Different ways of life. That's right.
Yeah.
Now, just a couple of questions about, gosh, it's such a big topic, isn't it? Veganism, vegetarian. Now, you're vegetarian or vegan?
I'm vegetarian. I'm I'm vegan by my standards, vegetarian by vegan standards, because we have friends who have a cow. So we take milk from protected cows. So we're not taking commercial milk or milk from cows who will be eventually slaughtered. So our broader definition is that would be, and these, so people have different definitions. So, but that's what our family does. Fortunately, we live near friends who have cows.
So is that the only product you're having, dairy? Are you having, I don't know,
Yeah.
is there anything else,
Yeah.
cheese or?
Well, they make yogurt, and also no, there is another couple that we get from their products because they have protected cows also. They sell it at a farmer's market, so they make yogurt and some kind of cheese, like amazing cheese. So I don't personally take milk products that much, just health consideration. And cows in India are different than many of the cows in the West. And a lot of the health issues have to deal because they're like GMO cows.
Yeah.
So, the pure Indian bred cow, if I drink the milk, it has no ill effect on me. If I drink milk of Western cows, sometimes I can't digest it. So it's a different breed,
Yeah.
but that's another topic. So, but
Now, with the, I just want to talk about eating meat and the karmic reaction also, that the component of it with, violence towards animals as well, and different things like that. So, if you can just talk to us a little bit about that topic.
okay. Well, let me go back step a little bit. Why I became vegetarian, because when I began practicing what's called bhakti, bhakti is devotion, bhakti yoga, then compassion is a foundational principle of that, as it is in all spiritual practice. And so that compassion extends not just to humans, but extends to all living entities. So the philosophy of bhakti is that you have to have a lifestyle that supports your spirituality, and it has to be in tune with it. And so if you're insisting on violence towards animals and you're trying to develop a higher consciousness, it's a contradiction. It doesn't work. So it's a paradox. It undermines what you're trying to do. So as part of that practice, that's what was required. And that's when I became vegetarian, because when I was young, vegetarianism was not, it was just taking hold. It was not like it had filtered into society very much. And so I could say I was conscious, but not that conscious. So as a byproduct of the practice, I did it. And so then by doing it and by studying the Vedas in relation to my spirituality, then I began to learn about this karmic connection, which is not always so obvious. I mean, we can understand if there's violence toward animals, there must be some reaction.
Yeah.
But then my spiritual master said something that kind of blew our minds. He said the reaction of animal killing, especially cow killing, is war. That violence going there will come back in human society. And he said that something else which is mind-blowing. He said if we just stop that violence, all the problems in human society would stop. So he saw this connection. And the way karma works is, for us, we try to look at immediate connection. Well, I hit my finger, now it's black and blue. That's the karma of being negligent while you use a hammer. Okay, that's there. But it's more subtle because we don't always know how these laws work. So we're just looking to, connect the dots, but the dots sometimes don't connect directly.
Yeah.
So that's what he taught us from the Vedas, that violence towards other living beings, not just humans, comes back on human society. And the problem is the people who aren't committing the violence, but it comes back, like we're all karmically involved. If my neighbors are killing animals, there's a reaction, but it's going to affect the mass consciousness and the karma of the total karma of the planet. So then I have to suffer also. So I think that's important for people to understand. 'Cause some people say, well, I don't mind eating meat, or what does it matter? Well, it has an effect on other people.
Yeah.
A mass karmic reaction. Yeah.
But we have a choice. So if the neighbour's doing that, whatever they're doing, like we don't have to eat the meat, or we can choose to not be a part of that chain.
Exactly. And it's, at least, that's all we can do is make the choice ourselves. Like I always say, it's important for people to understand how their actions, like you say, their personal choices, and how your personal choices not only affect you, but because it affects your consciousness and activities are affecting other people. And so, I've made many people vegetarians, obviously, because I am, so it's natural. So when you uplift yourself, you naturally affect people in more positive ways because you're more positive. So it works both ways. But that's, when I look at political situations and having studied the Vedas and looking at how we're looking for solutions politically, it's sad that we don't understand karmic consequences because we're looking at, immediate causes. But if you go back karmically, you say, no, this is not the cause. It go deeper, 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 and say, the cause is here. And so there's so many problems that are caused by mediating that people don't know. Not just the obvious ones like the physical or environmental, but deeper issues. So it's interesting.
And I think it's also interesting times too with this sort of group think, people being part of like groups. And we've seen on TV, on the news over the past year, even with riots and people demonstrating, and they're doing it in a group. And even when they're pulling statues down, and 4 people are pulling the statue down, but then the statue falls on someone and injures them or kills them. Whose fault is it? No one's going to say it's my fault because there were 4 people holding it and there were thousands of people cheering. So they take the onus off, perhaps. Well, there's no sort of ill feeling for myself. I'm not going to go home and not be able to sleep at night because we all wanted that statue down, but it was just bad luck that person got in the way. And I find that a little bit troubling.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a symptom of one, not wanting to take responsibility, and I think not thinking deeply enough. And I think that's really, it's really a problem in modern society, especially now with social media. We want everything in small bits and pieces, and we need to think deeper. And I think a lot of the problems that we face in the world today that we're addressing is because people are thinking deeper. And we didn't think this deeply, but still there's large segments of society that aren't thinking deeply, and changes are happening because of deep thinking. That's so important. Just like to talk about this, just to let people hear about it, and whether they agree or not, but just to expose to think.
Exactly.
It's so important.
That's right. And I only did mention that as well because it's worth, remembering those things too, because just to remember, well, we are each individual with our own karma. So we can choose, do we want to be part of that group think, or, it's a better thing to perhaps really own it. Like we are our own group, one person, we're our own group.
Yeah. And if there are problems in our life, who is responsible? That's the essential teaching of karma. Karma, I mean, it's a philosophical concept, but it's also very basic and fundamental. That if you just say, well, it's my karma. Yeah, but you created your karma. So you can't blame your karma, because some people blame their karma, right?
But
Well,
what about when karma comes from past lives? If someone says, "Oh, that's my karma from my past life,"
yeah,
but
but
are
if
you
you're
saying they can fix it now, or they created it now?
both,
Really?
well, you can't, you say, so well, according to my karma, then this is going to happen. All right, okay. But you have to take responsibility because you created that karma in your past life. But stop creating it now. Start doing things that would counteract that or produce better karma. So it works both ways. Like if you read astrology, the astrologer is just reading your karma. But at the same time, he's saying, what you need to do, because of this karma, what you need to do now is this to counteract it, or,
Yeah.
do some welfare work or this or that. Maybe your last life you were too selfish, and now like things aren't coming to you; they're being taken away from you. So both things simultaneously. So you're never entirely a slave of your past karma. And spiritually speaking, through mantra and meditation, you can actually absolve yourself of past karma. You can destroy it,
Really?
which
Through
is,
chanting and what?
yeah, through chanting, service,
Chanting,
devotional
service, devotion.
activities.
Nice.
Um, things like like we in India, we bathe in sacred rivers, we go to sacred places, and it actually purifies past karma. And you feel it. You feel lighter, clearer. So
Something about water too, isn't it? It's very spiritual, the cleansing.
yeah,
Even if we have a shower or a bath, it's a spiritual experience, isn't
exactly.
it?
Yeah, it is cleansing because yeah, material purity, cleanliness, godliness, material
Mm.
purity, spiritual purity. Yeah, because lifestyle affects consciousness. Consciousness affects lifestyle. It's a circle. Yeah.
So, can you just talk a little bit about the chanting? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, if you, it's a very interesting area how it
Um,
zens out the mind and body, the vibration, the chanting on
yeah.
certain words of saints or spiritual people, gurus.
Yeah. Chanting, one of the, well, let me explain the experience I had chanting first, because I think it'll help answer the question, and I'll get into it a little more. I had been dabbling with meditation from the age of 17, but I wasn't that serious about it, and I wasn't getting that much from it. And then it was silent meditation. Then I came across chanting mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra. I came across when I was like 18 or something. It was on the radio actually. And then George Harrison. There was a play called Hair. Well, I was like 17 or 18, and in the Hair they sang Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. I didn't know what it was. My friends and I would just sing it and laugh. But then George Harrison came out with some of that, and then My Sweet Lord. So my experience with mantra was I was chanting. When I started chanting, I was chanting like I would say almost every day. That's how I got into it, and the experience was unique. I never had an experience like that from anything that I did, and every time I chanted, that experience was there, and it got better, which which showed me very clearly this is different than anything material, because materially it's like, how do you become happy materially? Even if it's just to go to a forest to de-stress, still some environment or some adjustment needs to be made, or you go somewhere with good friends, or so many things make us happy. But now I'm chanting, and it had nothing to do with having, and I wasn't affected if something bad happened, because when I chant, it was always that experience. And I would look at that and I think, this is really interesting, because in my whole life, I would only be made happy by having something, even if it was a drug, because that was the hippie days. But having something, or a relationship, or going somewhere, or doing something. So it was quite an emotional experience, a spiritual experience that kind of caught me off guard. Then the second thing that happened that was very powerful was at that point, this is the late 60s. So, it's kind of like marijuana, LSD. It was kind of like you eat it for breakfast in those days. It was just so common. And all of us got to a point where like, this is kind of stupid, like we've gone as far as we need to go with drugs and we need to go beyond that. But it's hard to give up something unless you have something better. And so I wanted to give it up. I didn't, I was giving it up a little bit. I didn't know how. And I had a lot of relationships with women that I felt were, I don't know, for lack of a better word, unsympathetic, impure, just, I didn't like the way I was dealing with them. I wasn't seeing them as people, more as objects. And I really felt bad about it. And I felt that I'm just taking advantage of them for myself, and I don't really care about them that much. Now, those things really bothered me. And then about 6 weeks after I was chanting, that all changed. I woke up one morning and I said to myself, you haven't taken any drugs in 2 weeks, and you're not thinking about the opposite sex the way you used to think about them. You're not. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So those two experiences were extremely powerful, and it didn't even require that I had to understand anything about meditation other than just to kind of know practically how to do it.
Yeah.
Because the mantra was doing that. So that's my experience. You can understand.
Awesome.
You can understand a lot about it, but I think the experience is what's most important.
Yeah. It's like you have to experience it to understand it. But it's good to hear people like yourself tell us that story.
Yeah, appetizer for you, maybe.
Exactly.
For people. I mean, I could explain a little bit philosophically, but one thing my spiritual master said, he said, don't try to understand the mantra because it's spiritual, and it's not something, because it's spiritual, it's not something you can like intellectualize according to any, you can't relate to it material. We always try to relate to something based on our experience. So we look at things spiritual from the material side and trying to analyze it. Well, this world is like this, then that should be like, he said, no, don't do that. You can't. And he said, you don't have to. But he said, that vibration, you'll hear the mantra and it will go beyond your intelligence and mind, and it'll connect directly with the soul. And my experience was what I described as basically what was happening. And I'm chanting for 51 years, and still I never tried to intellectualize it because I can't, because it's not material. It's like the mantra is an avatar of God. It's God incarnate in sound. Like, how can you you have to experience that.
Exactly.
And then you get purified from it. And you go, okay, well, this has to be spiritual, otherwise how did I get purified? And then someone says, well, you could just believe it. You could just chant anything and it'll happen. I dare anyone, I chant every day for 2 hours minimum. I dare anyone to chant every day for
So we've just lost a bit of the connection there. Okay.
Yeah, you're back. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you're muted. Still muted.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. You got it now? Awesome.
Yeah. I wanted to say something just so I don't forget. That
Of course.
I find it interesting that in my sharing what I've learned and experienced in my life with people, the topic of vegetarianism always comes up because I find it fundamental to the spiritual practice. So when people are spiritually interested and they're not vegetarian, I say, well, this is something you should do. And some people are, yeah, that makes sense. And other people are like, I don't know, or I don't know if I can, or, and some people say, well, I have a religion, and my religion, you don't have to. So I generally ask these people, I'd say, well, just do an experiment and for 1 week don't eat any meat, and just to see how it affects your consciousness. And it's an amazing experiment because after a week they come back and say, I am more sensitive now to the suffering of animals now that I'm not eating them. So, spiritual life is holistic. And for me, the meditation pulled me above my need for meat and so on. But there are other ways to approach it for different people. And sometimes just not doing it will have such a good effect on your consciousness that you'll understand, oh yeah, there is some reaction that's happening to me. And if I want to be in a higher consciousness, I should live that way.
I'm glad you mentioned that. And it's all about experimenting, because we can say all these things, but it's up to the individual, isn't it? And they need to sort of walk the walk. They need to feel the experience, every human with anything.
Yeah. And how can you talk about,
like you said?
Yeah, exactly. How can you talk about something if you don't do it? Say, oh, I don't need to be vegetarian. Oh, why don't you try it and then say it?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I would suggest anyone who's not vegetarian who's listening to this, try it. See, it's an experiment on yourself. You only have to believe yourself. You don't have to believe anybody else.
Perfect. Absolutely. Now, just before we finish off, you said 2 hours of chanting you do. Is that what, straight, 2 hours straight?
It can be sometimes.
But
this morning I chanted a little bit because I'm going to be chanting later, so I break it up. You don't have to. But the early morning is amazing. Like when I get up and then I chant and the world is quiet. It's like I've just gone out of this world. I'm not even in it. I lose a little sense of my body, my environment. And I go to this spiritual place, which is very powerful. And a lot of people will teach that you should get up early, and by getting up early you can reflect on your life and plan your day, which is great. But before you do that, you should transcend your life. That's my philosophy. Yeah, exactly. Before you get into your life, transcend it, because then you get perspective. Go into your spiritual dimension. Don't just go into your, today I'm going to do this and plan it out, and by 5 in the morning I've got everything planned, or I've done my exercise. Okay, that's good for your body, that's good for your material life, but transcend all that before you start. I think that's where society is. It needs more of that spiritual input, that we should get centered spiritually, because that's what we lack. We're out of balance. Everything's material. Work hard, get more, get ahead. And what's the consequence? Stress. We're not happy. Spiritual lacking.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good thing there, right there, just to get out of our head, stop analyzing, and get into our core. Like you said, when we started, we're all more spiritual than we realize. So trust that, tap into it, and then do everything else. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that is, like you're talking about Veda, Ayurveda. That is traditionally how people, at least in India and probably most cultures of the world, live. Their spirituality was not a Sunday 1 hour affair. Spirituality is how they started their lives. They had temples in their homes. They would rise, do their meditation, chant their mantras, do their worship. That was just like your day didn't start until after that was done. That was like, that was your spiritual breakfast. That was just normal for everybody. And look how society has become to compartmentalize, for many people, religion to an hour on Sunday. and then,
it's incredible.
And then, what happens the rest of the week? So that's another beautiful thing that I like about traditional cultures, that their spirituality is it's very much incorporated within everything. I want to tell you something really funny, because there's a place called Vrindavan. It's one of the most spiritual places in India, and I spent a lot of time there. And my friend told me a story about Vrindavan, and just to give you an indication of what this culture is like. This traditional Indian culture. So it was getting very hot, and one man went into a store to buy a fan, a ceiling fan. And he asked the shop owner, he said, can you give me a guarantee
Mm.
on the fan? And the shop owner said, I can't even guarantee you're going to be alive for the rest of this day. So that's kind of, their spirituality is just, it's just
Wow.
like, it's, you say wear it on your shirt. It's just, it infiltrates everything. That's how they think.
Exactly.
And he was just laughing saying it, because it's for him, it's just like, yeah, that's how we all think here,
It's the best way, isn't it? It takes off so much stress, doesn't
It's
it? We're always
reality.
worrying about tomorrow, yesterday, now.
Well, it's just, I think we're all trying to run away from reality because reality is like,
That's
it's
it.
not
That's
always
it. That's it.
beautiful, but when you face it and you can laugh at it and accept it, um, and then your spirituality becomes, part of everything. And
Perfect. You saying there, you've got to laugh at it too. That's a very good point. We take life too seriously.
yeah, I like COVID for some people has been the best thing that ever happened to them. They started thinking and
True.
spending more time with their family, and um, so you know,
Exactly
accept it.
right.
How can we use this? What's good? I can't control it. I don't know how long it's going to last. So what do I do now? Stress out or
Mm,
see it from a spiritual perspective. Okay, what do
exactly.
I learn? What do I learn? What do I do?
And it's interesting as well because during that time, I sort of got thinking. I was looking at the trees. I was looking at the birds. I thought they don't know what's going on with COVID. The whole world's been tipped upside down, and they're still happy. The sun's still shining. The tree's still amazing. It's been there for 80 years. They don't know what's going on. So I'm going to click in with them. And I remember I was walking along the tram line and I was just for about half an hour. I was like, yeah, I'm with them.
I like
and
that.
I try to go back to that every day. I'm like, yes,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
nothing's changed according to them.
that's good. Yeah, and they never, transgress natural law. They're just like they're always doing the right thing because that's, it's only the human beings who've figured out how to do it wrong.
Mm,
The animals, they haven't figured out how to do it wrong.
yeah,
Sometimes my spiritual master would say, he said, sometimes they would say, well, look at what humans are doing. Sometimes they seem worse than animals. And he would say, no, the animals are in many ways better. They're not transgressing all these laws. They're not,
true,
if human
true.
beings become extinct, it's not like a big problem. If bees become extinct, yeah, that's a big problem.
Exactly right.
So it's interesting how we've messed up so much, which can only mean how messed up we are, because how can you mess
Yeah.
up if you're not messed up? And so I like your idea. Yeah, we'll hang out with the birds and the bees and the trees, learn from them.
That's it. But I don't sort of share that with too many people because they'll probably think, yeah, she's a little bit cuckoo. But I don't care. I know I'm not.
No, I think if people think I'm crazy, I take it as a compliment.
That's true. I like that. I like that. That's
I
good.
think this world is so crazy that if you think I'm normal, that's like
That's
that's
a problem.
depressed. You're
Exactly.
so normal. Oh no, I'm going to go home and cry.
Well, there's a lot of not normal people around. I mean, look, a lot of people seeking more. They want to be enlightened. They want to learn. I see it on social media. I'm connecting with so many people for radio, people that want a better life. They want to eat better. They want to love animals more, not eat animals,
Yeah,
seek God more,
yeah, it's
get to
good.
know themselves. It's a big lot of
Yeah,
people out there.
it's becoming more normal, which is
That's right.
fantastic. And so, um, and the other side's also getting worse. It seems from
Yeah,
my
yeah,
perspective, like the polarization is greater. And I think a lot of, at least my experience as a spiritual practitioner and as a spiritual teacher, is that so much of what we teach and what we learn is intuitive. It's just like open your eyes and allow yourself, without prejudice, to just see what you're seeing and take it in, and you start to put two and two together and go, oh, okay, these spiritual principles or these higher principles. It's just common sense. So I think a lot of people have been, conditioned to not see, and they don't, and even when they see it, they deny it because it shakes their conditioning at the core of everything they believe. And I once gave a vegetarian book to I was seeing a physical therapist, and I gave her a book on vegetarianism, and then I saw her like 2 days later. She said, "I hate that book." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because everything in it is true,
Exactly.
and if I accept it as true, I have to do it." So I think that's where a lot of people are at.
They can't make their chicken curry anymore.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to, more like it.
I just close my eyes, and then I don't have to, confront it. But if you open your eyes and are willing to confront it without prejudice, and just put all your conditioning aside and say, "Oh, I'm just going to look at it," then enlightenment is kind of, in a sense, it's just natural. That's why I see so many people are becoming enlightened, because values are changing, and they feel more free to think. I wanted to tell you about this one exercise I have. It's not come out yet. It's in a book that we're just laying out now. But we have pictures of 50 animals on top, and each animal has a number. And then we have columns, such as food, pet, game, free range, so forth. And we ask people, take each animal and put it into one of the columns, and then after you put it into the columns, you finish it, describe why you chose that column. Because it becomes obvious that your view of all what is food and what isn't and what could be hunted and not hunted is just conditioned by your social upbringing. And every society will have different animals in different columns. Dogs are food. So, I think it's so obvious, isn't it?
It is. And when you say it like that, we get upset with other countries. Oh, they eat cat and dog. Well, wait a minute. We eat sheep and cow. It's an animal. Hello.
Yeah. What if people start eating horses? Horses are, but what if people find that horses taste good?
Yeah.
And it's like it's culture. Where do you draw the line? Who decided what was food and what wasn't? Well, basically based on social values, religious values, taste, economics. And so a conscious person has to draw the line that all animals on one side, they're not to be eaten, hunted, and so forth. And
that's right.
There's enough, someone once said that we're the only civilization now in history where hunters hunt with a full stomach. So, hunting as a sport, and religious people hunt as a sport, as a family sport. They take their kids. I'll just say that's an interesting thing to contemplate.
Oh,
I don't want to say about it. Yeah, it's interesting.
So your book, just to finish off, is there anything else you want to share? Have you got your books or anything else there?
Well, you can
workshops.
Yeah, I have. I do workshops on meditation. I do workshops on forgiveness, overcoming ego, relationships. I combine being better as a person with being better spiritually, how they both feed into one another. Some very good people lack the spiritual. Some very spiritual people lack the humanness that, it sounds like a contradiction. They're spiritual, but they, in some ways, are lacking in humanness. And so I try to combine both. And if you go Mahatma Das on Amazon, you'll find some books. If you Google Mahatma Das, you'll see I have many courses, and especially for people who are more interested in spirituality. But if people want to contact me on Facebook, then I'll answer questions if they have any, or if they write you can send to me. I'm happy to help.
Thank you very much. Anything else you'd like to share before we finish off?
That's dangerous, because I could talk. You give me one topic.
I can talk too.
You've been good at letting me talk. I don't know. You have anything in your mind you think I should share with people? Oh yeah, something I'd like to share. This was something that was shared to me by my spiritual master when there was a discussion about eating meat. And when people would ask him, he would just ask them, would it, if you were an animal or just as a human being, you can understand if your head is slit, your neck is slit, excuse me. You wouldn't want that. That's painful, right? You could understand it's painful. So he said, then if you would experience pain, then consider that if you were that animal, you also wouldn't want to experience pain. So if you wouldn't want to experience pain and they're experiencing pain, and if you were the animal, you wouldn't want to experience pain, then put that all together. And it becomes an easier formula to give up meat. So I know that's hard for a lot of people who don't want to give it up, to think that way. But it's an unfortunate fact of life that in America, the Africans that were brought as slaves were not treated as humans. They were treated as things. And animals which we slaughter are also treated as things. So human society has a history of treating living beings as things, not as humans. And when I study slavery and I study animal slaughter, I see so many similarities to what's been done. Do you know that slaves were separated from their children and husbands and wives when they were sold? The calves are separated from the cow. And then they become commodities, right? And then when they're no longer needed, they're killed. If slaves disobeyed, they were tortured, killed. Many died on the boat. It's so similar. And so when we desensitize ourselves to the feelings of others, that's when society is on its way out of human life, I would say. Not to speak of spiritual life, out of human life. And so I see a lot of that desensitization. What's the word? Desensitization. Really at the heart of some of the biggest problems in human society. For example, does Big Pharma want to cure cancer?
Yeah, exactly.
No, because cancer is a huge business. So do we care about the fact that people are dying? Well, it's good for business. Not every doctor feels that way, I'm not saying, but it's a concern. And so in America, I don't know about Australia, in America, it's illegal to cure cancer by any other means other than surgery, chemo, or radiation. If you do anything else, your license will be taken away, even if you cure them. So this is where I'm seeing, I don't think people always connect the dots between meat eating and this kind of insensitivity to human life and suffering. But obviously it's a huge problem in human society, prejudice, racial prejudice. And what's at the heart of it? We deal with human beings, some is better, some is less. We're dealing with animals in the same way. It's the same consciousness. So if we change our consciousness towards animals, it's going to be easier to solve the human problems because it's a consciousness. Yeah. So we as vegetarians or vegans sometimes kind of find it interesting that people are animal lovers or, protesting against racism while at the same time they're eating a hamburger. It's like wait a minute, we have to clarify this picture. It's not working. It's not going to work in the way we would want it to work. So I think that's important to realize.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that all comes back to what we were saying, what you were saying is the chanting and all that sort of thing. When you get more aware,
yes,
and get more spiritual, I think all the answers come without trying, without, it's just all there. It's all there.
Yeah. Revealed. Yeah, it becomes obvious. Yeah. Yes. If people chant, then everything that we're talking about would make much more sense. And if it already makes sense, it would be more experiential. It would just become easier to imbibe in your life these ways of being, these ways of thinking. And chanting's it's like the fire under you that's pushing you up. so that you align your heart, your mind, your soul. It all becomes aligned, because a lot of times we're out of alignment. We know what we want, but we don't have the power to always do it. So this being more spiritual aligns it, so you have the power to do what you know is right. And so that's part of the equation. Not just knowing, but being able to do it and feel it, so that I actually want to do it. Feel the suffering of the animals. Feel that, hear those screams. Once you feel it, it's like, how many people would want to go to a slaughterhouse? They wouldn't, especially not to go if you want to remain meat eater, because once you go, you couldn't.
Wow.
You wouldn't be able to do it. So when I become president of the United States, I will require.
Go on, do it.
I will require.
Trump did it, so I'm sure everyone else can.
You know that I think he's Australian. He gave a speech on this. He said if all slaughterhouses had glass were glass buildings with loudspeakers, nobody would eat meat.
My God!
If all slaughterhouses were visible, we could see it. They were made of glass.
No
They had loudspeakers. No one would eat meat. And I think it's a powerful statement.
There's so much marketing and brainwashing, and what's it called? We're all hypnotized. We see, buy these free-range chickens, and the chickens are running around in the sun, and no.
It sounds good. It sounds like I'm, being conscious. Well, they were happy before I killed them. But I don't know. That doesn't work for me. Like, invite me on a vacation and then chop my head off. I'd rather stay home. I think that's all what I call the lack of deep thinking, or maybe it's what we could call it, the fear of deep thinking. I think a lot of people are afraid to think deeply because they know where that thinking is going to take them, and they're afraid that maybe they can't be that change, and it's hard to confront that that's what's right. It's better just like, let's not think about it because I don't know if I can do it. That's a huge problem. And, I always teach people the worst thing you could do is run away from what you need to face, because there's no progress in that. So, I would humbly suggest everyone who's, kind of relating to what we've been talking about in terms of running away, run into it. It's the best thing you can do. Face it, face your fears, and face reality. Don't live a life where you're running away from truth. It doesn't work. It's only going to stress
your fear and do it anyway. Sorry, what did you say?
It's only going to stress you out, and it's going to force you to do things to cause you to forget. Become a workaholic, alcoholic, sexaholic, hobbyaholic. You'll just do things to forget reality because you don't want to face it. So that's quite common in the world. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for joining.
Happy to be here.
I feel very blessed, and our listeners also. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for doing what you're doing, and I'm happy to have become some part of this.
Thank you. Thank you.